In this video, we're going to make a start on restoring this speedometer for the moke. Now, this speedo, I haven't tested it, but we'll just see how we go from there. The main thing is to sort of disassemble it, clean it, and then just make sure everything is working. So one of the first things I need to do is, first of all, we'll just disconnect all the wiring. Most of that is for the light globes. The light globes sort of attach into these sockets here. They kind of just clip into it. I'll just try and get one out just so I can show you. They have these clips around the side, and then the hole is just a central hole, and that just slides into it. Okay, so up at the top here we've got a voltage regulator. What that voltage regulator does, it reduces the 10 or the 12 volts from the main electrical system, reduces it to 10 volts because some of the gauges, specifically the fuel gauge, needs 10 volts for it to function correctly. Okay, I'll just try and undo those just so I can move the wiring out of the way. There's also a nut here that needs to come off to ground. That's the grounding point. So let's get all those removed. All right, the next thing I want to do is take off the fuel gauge because that is a separate gauge in itself. And I do have a fuel sender, the part that actually sits in the fuel tank. So I'll be able to test this fuel gauge to see if it's working correctly or not. Lift out. There we go. I'll just set that to the side for now. Now I do have a selection of gauges here, or speedometers. None of those are the 140 kilometer an hour ones. They're all in miles, but some of the parts will still be usable. So the actual glass, the chrome surround, they're the parts I need, possibly the needle as well, but we'll see how we go from there. Alright, what I want to try and do now is get this needle removed, and I'm going to just try putting a piece of card behind it. I'll just squash this a bit flatter because it's a bit too thick. This will prevent me from just damaging the actual face, because even if you rub here, it'll take off the black background. Alright, so there's the needle there, and I probably will replace this one just because there's some imperfections on the paint there, but I may just be able to repaint that, but I need to use the correct type of paint. Okay, so things to be careful of, there's the little piece of metal there that the needle rests on. The next thing I want to try and do is just get the face off, and I just need to figure out whether the actual face, it does sort of wrap around there a bit, but that's not actually holding it in place. I believe that little tab there is just resting it. So it looks like the next thing to do would be to undo these two screws. I'll try this side first because it's not as rusted. Okay, alright, so this whole face should just lift off. Right, central piece comes off first. Alright, all of these pieces here, I'll have to sort of investigate whether they can be replaced, because looking at the shape of them, could even be a challenge to try and get these 3D printed, because these are made of rubber, but all they are kind of like a cover to go onto there, so when the bulb shines through, it only lights up that. And alright, so what I want to do next, if we can possibly reset that back to 0, that would be good. But the main purpose of getting all that part is just to clean it down. So if I undo these 2 screws here at the back, that should allow this whole internal piece to move out. So I just need to be careful of that tiny spring there that returns the speedo needle. Okay, flip it over and then I'll just lift that out. Okay. Alright, sort of just need to study how that all works and then just see if there is an easy way to do it. I know there's for the actual speedo drive, to get the actual speed, there is a part in here which is magnetized, and I believe that you need to sometimes remagnetize that. Okay, so I've connected up my drill, just got a speedo cable, and I'm just using one of the speedos here which works. So this one is in miles per hour, so when the drill is in motion, alright, so we're getting 55 miles per hour, so that's about 88 kilometers an hour. So what I'll do, I might just stick the needle back on here just to see if that actually functions correctly. I should have done it at the start, but that's okay. Alright, so in order to test whether this is working correctly, so 88 kilometers per hour obviously would be around about here, just up there. So if I just sort of leave that sitting back there as a guide, that way I can sort of get an idea. I'll just need to get that needle put back in the hole. Obviously it's not necessarily going to be 100% accurate where I'm sticking it in, because I believe it's just a pin that it goes into, but we'll try it from there and just see what position it points to. Well, it sort of looks like it's close to where it should be. If the actual needle was on correctly, it's sort of over in that range there, so it probably does function correctly. And I don't want to just rip the whole thing apart. Ideally I just want to clean it up and, if possible, get these reset back to 0, but I may need to disassemble a fair bit in order for that to happen. Alright, so one thing I wanted to test is actually how the odometer part works. And the way it works, this sort of white arm, as the drive is rotating, the white arm sort of moves. You can see there's teeth on this yellow wheel here, and then what actually happens is it kind of hooks it and pulls it as we go. So I'll just try and get it working so I can demonstrate the movement. And of course it's not actually working. The actual white arm, where it sits on the yellow wheel, it's a bit worn out, but you can watch its operation here. Alright, so that part will need to be either replaced or possibly adjusted, but it doesn't look like it can, because it looks like the actual bottom part here is just worn out. Alright, let's start to try and get this white arm off it, because it could be the case where I just need to just adjust it somehow to get it to where it needs to go. Right, so what I believe is the problem is it's probably related to this gear here, and the end of it kind of rotates this whole section, and it's that rotation which doesn't seem correct for this part to sort of hook into the little gear mechanism. I don't think just heating that bit and bending it down would be the right way to go. So let's try and just disassemble this. I'll just move this bit of, get that bit of metal out first. So the little bend in that points down. And then this piece here, looks like that whole piece should just slide down to get it off. Alright, so we've left with that pin, and okay, that's just going to slide off. Okay, so the actual rotation of that part. Okay, so I've pulled apart one of the other speedos just to see how the mechanism is different. This one, the actual mechanism itself is a metal arm. It sort of works in the similar way, and it looks like I'd be able to just put that one across to it. But this spring here at the bottom seems to be the only part that is different. So, but I'll just sort of show you this one working. Alright, so that mechanism works. It's just a case of whether or not it can fit on there or not, or it might just be better to try and get a new replacement arm. Alright, what I decided to do, I just wanted to fit it back there, just so I could stop it at the right point where it grabs the gear. And what's actually happening now, it's actually working correctly. So it could just be an issue where there wasn't enough lubrication behind that piece. So now it's working correctly. Alright, so what I'll do, I'll clean off all that old grease and just put something new on there and just see if that works properly. Okay, so I've put that the little retaining piece back in there, and it all functions correctly now. So it might have just been a case of not being lubricated properly. Okay, so that's good that that bit works now. The next goal now is to try and reset the odometer. So let's have a look at this. Alright, so let's start by I believe this is like a little piece of plastic. I'll just try and use the tweezers. So it's like a plastic washer. Then this brass piece, there's a little little key sort of section in there to keep that rotating with the wheel. Then we'll just see if that yellow gear will slide off. Yep. there we go. So the yellow gear comes off. And then we have this white disc. Will that come off? I'm not too sure. Okay, so then the white piece comes off. The way that was fitted, there's a couple of notches, and the two notches sort of go, they seem to sort of fit in that spot there and that spot there. So it looks like all that come off there. We now need to do something with the opposite end, and it may be possible that we just need to take out the entire shaft. Okay, so just playing around with it, what I was actually able to do, I've got it reset, and the way I did it, once all of these pieces were off, there's a bit more play in it, and what you can actually do is just move the two digits apart, and in this case here you can sort of see a blue piece of blue plastic. What that actually does is each time that unit rotates once, it increments the next one, and if you can move them apart, then you can freely rotate the one on that side. So you can sort of see two little dots here. If you separate the two units, then you can actually freely rotate that one until it gets back into the position. So that little part there, it increments it when it gets up to 9, and then obviously it rotates. So I was able to do that and reset it, and then just tested it with the drill again just to make sure it increments. Whether or not something will stuff up down that end, I don't know, but we'll have to wait and see. So okay, so what I might do, I'll just still give it a little bit of a clean up. There's a bit of dirt on there, and then I'm not going to mess around pulling it apart and doing the remagnetizing it, because I think it will be okay. It's more of the case of just cleaning the dust off it, making sure all the dirt is off the digits as well, and then I'll start putting it back together. Okay, so what I've done so far, I've sandblasted the main unit, and also that's been zinc coated, and what I am sorting out now are these parts here. So when I disassembled it, you sort of notice that these pieces are all perished. The purpose of those is to channel the light coming from the light globe into the actual coloured bezels. So one method I sort of came up to do this was just to use rubber grommets. I've got a whole kit of different size grommets. So using rubber grommets, what I plan to do is I'll probably just super glue that down. So use one grommet there, and then on the actual back where the actual coloured parts are, this size grommet slots on there nicely, and then what happens is when the two pieces are sandwiched together, the smaller grommet sort of sits into the larger one, and because the angle isn't completely straight, it sort of sits at an angle like that. So using the two grommets works fine. There's obviously a little bit of a gap where light could probably get through, but I think for the purpose of this and getting it working, it's not going to make a huge difference. And I'll test it with the lights off, just so I can see how much extra light is escaping from that point. So what I need to do is I'll put a light globe back on there, and I've got a power supply, and I'll just get that connected up just so it is on. Okay, so there's the light globe. Let me just put this piece on, and then the rubber grommet sort of holds itself. It's just by coincidence it's the right size for that. So I'll just place this on top. Okay, so that's sitting in the right spot. I'll just sort of just look through here and just make sure it hasn't slid apart. That is fine. So there we go. So that light is on, and I'll just, it's still daylight, so I'll turn off the light above me and just see if that makes a difference. Okay, so I've got the room as dark as I can sort of get it, so you can still see that light on. And if you look down the side, there's not really much light leakage at all. Obviously there's a bit around here and it's just going to light up that parts, but during daytime I don't think it's going to be an issue at all. Alright, so the first thing I'll need to do is just get the main mechanism back into the main body, insert that and then put those couple of screws into the back of it to hold it into position. Alright, so the next thing I need to do is just get these larger grommets put into position there, and the way I'm going to do it, I'm going to try just using super glue because they only need one bit just to hold it in the right spot, and then on the actual face on the back of here, these rubber grommets are just going to hold themselves on. They're not going to be glued. On one of the older Speedos, to the one which I pulled apart, instead of using these things, they actually just use a cardboard tube. I'll just quickly show it to you. Obviously the depth of the dish is a lot deeper, so in this particular one it uses these cardboard tubes to block out or to prevent light from escaping. Alright, so let's get them glued on. Alright, so let's get this piece inserted. Okay, that's sitting nice and flat, so hopefully all of those pieces are good. It looks like they're all sitting as they should be, the smaller grommet into the larger one. And when I did the test, they all sort of held themselves in the right place anyway. Okay. The next part, I just want to get this central piece on. That will need to be screwed in. Okay, so with the needle, you probably remember there was a little mark in there. What I did, I just used some white spray paint, sprayed that into the lid of the spray can, and just used a toothpick just to fill in that little gap. Okay, so I've got the needle back in now. I had to sort of just do a few tests because you need to test the speed or where it points to when the drill is on before you disassemble everything. Okay, so it sort of goes to the 88 or close to 90 kilometers an hour. So that seems to be near enough. Odometer is rotating fine. All right, I'm gonna have a go at fitting the chrome part around the edge. So I've got a few of these and I've just tried to pick out the best one. And that one's sort of, there's a bit of rust on it, but it will be okay because there's a little edge on the piece of glass. I'm just trying to do this without touching it because I've just cleaned it. guess you can touch the outside piece. Alright, so glass sits inside the rubber. Then it sits inside the chrome edging. Alright, so then this piece goes on next. I'll just pick the best side. Alright, that seems to be sitting in okay. The next thing, obviously, what you'd do is bend over the edges just to make, in a couple of spots, just to make it stay on there permanently, but I won't do that just yet. It is holding itself for now. And then what I might actually get working on is the fuel gauge. Okay, so let's test the fuel gauge. So what I've actually done, instead of using the regulator, I have just turned the voltage down on my transformer just to 10 volts. The way that these get connected, it's just in series. So there's two connections on the sender. This is for a mini, so that goes in the tank. When the tank fills up, that lifts up, that's full, and that should be low. So I'll leave it in the low position, and I don't think it matters which way around these go, but I'll just try it and then we'll just see what happens. So that'll be ground, and then I just need to connect the other terminal on the back of the gauge to the terminal on the sender. So in theory that should still stay on empty. Keep in mind that's calibrated for the moke. So what I need to do next is I've cleaned this up the best I can. It is a bit rusty on the outside, but for the time being I just want to get it back in there, because if things are faulty it will need to be replaced. So that just had a couple of screws to hold it in place. To undo this, I'll just explain. You've got to undo the actual front cover piece. The face is clamped into here, so you have to undo those, and then the face will come off, and then you can sort it out that way. Alright, let's just flip it over and see how things look. Alright, there we go. Okay, I might just test these other, or put lights up onto those just to see how the light shines through those other pieces. Okay, so the first test I want to do is just to see how it looks when just the lights are on. So that's all the background. What you're looking at on your screen, it does look a lot brighter when I'm looking at it. Alright, the next test are what I'm going to use as the indicators, I guess, the orange ones on each side. So they work nicely. Alright, the next two are the high beam light and the oil warning light. On your screen it doesn't look too good, but it's fine on here. Okay, so we're pretty much all done now. We'll just give it one little final test before I pack everything up. Okay, I'll leave it there. Hopefully you found this video of some use if you've never pulled one of these apart. But just be careful with those digits if you do want to try that trick of just rotating them. Alright, I'll leave it there. Thanks for watching my videos.